Today I'm going to show you a quick creative pre-production tip that has changed my workflow over the last couple of years. Alright, so if you're like me, I think you can relate that when you're starting a project, typically you'll open up Milanote, you'll put a bunch of references in, you'll go to ShotDeck or FrameSet, pull some inspiration, watch old movies, find music on MusicBed, kind of go from there. But this video is not about those methods of pre-production as much as I use them. This video is more of a creative and fun tool that you can add to your pre-production toolbox. So a couple years back, I stumbled on this way of pre-production from a filmmaker named Ryan Booth. He's an incredible DP turned director, and I've been very inspired by his work for quite a few years. And one of the ways that Ryan approaches pre-production is he will take a cinema camera package on a location scout with him. So while he's on the scout, instead of just taking like iPhone photos of the location, he'll actually bring like a Blackmagic 6K or something and just shoot little scenes while on the scout. This basically allows him to test different locations, lighting, lenses, framing, and it kind of lets him interact with the environment in a way that you don't get to interact with it if you're just shooting on your iPhone. On a YouTube video scout, Ryan actually wrote, "On every big commercial I direct, I start the process by doing director scouts. I look at all the possible locations with my location manager, and then I make my choices and present them to the agency and the client. A couple of years ago, I started filming little scenes on these scouts using my Blackmagic Pocket Cam. I discovered what has now become an integral part of the process for me. I use these sketches to get ideas for my scenes and blocking and action for my characters." Honestly, it's a pretty simple but genius idea in my opinion. So I first tried this method back in the summer of 2023. I was creating an anti-human trafficking mini documentary on a human trafficking survivor. It was a very fun project, but honestly after a while, looking at the Milanote, doing the same thing over and over and over again, it started to feel a little bit stale. And that's when I came across Ryan's method of shooting a little location scout film. So we planned on shooting this in downtown LA back in the summer of 2023, and I wanted to go scout locations before we actually brought the team out to shoot the project. So usually for something like this, we would just, like I said, use my iPhone, use Artemis or CAD Rage and kind of shoot shots that way. But what I did this time was I brought the actual camera package out with me and I just shot a bunch of locations that we were planning on shooting at. It really did make a difference in the project. It was probably the most fun I've ever had on a location scout, and it just kind of like breathed new life into the project for us. When we brought the team out to shoot, we knew exactly what we wanted. We knew what the light would be looking like. We knew where we wanted to put her. It just made things go way smoother, and it gave so much more inspiration to me rather than just going out with my iPhone like I normally would. So if you go back to my first video from about 2 years ago, that is actually all the location scout footage that I shot. Again, like I said, this is not a replacement for anything technical. I think you should still be using Milanote. I think you should be finding references, watch old movies, go out with a viewfinder app and figure out which lens and focal length you want to be using. So the only downside to this is that it's not always practical. On every project, I don't always have access to a location before we shoot. Oftentimes, the best you can do is use Milanote, use Artemis, use Sunseeker, use CAD Rage. Those are great tools. I don't think you should discredit any of those. I use them on pretty much every project I work on, and this is just something that I add into my toolbox, like I've said. For example, the last video I posted breaking down the documentary that we shot in Montana. When we got to Montana, we got there in the evening and we shot first thing in the morning at sunrise. So we really didn't have any time to go out, see the location. We just got straight into shooting. However, if you watch that video, you'll see that we did do a lot of pre-production. And so we didn't necessarily need to implement something like this because we had already spent so much time making sure that we were confident going into that project. So if you don't have the ability to shoot a location scout film, here's a couple of alternate solutions. On the Montana documentary, like I said, we didn't have time to do this. And so what I do in a situation like that is I'll just carry around a 35mm point and shoot camera with me. Having a film camera on me kind of allows me to look at things a little bit differently. It kind of lets me take a step back and to look at it through a more intentional lens because I don't want to be wasting money on film. Sometimes I think shooting digital, you lose the preciousness of what you're shooting and you just go, oh man, let's shoot everything. But if you have a 35mm point and shoot or whatever it is, it kind of makes you slow down. It makes you look at it. You're aware that each shot costs, a couple dollars. And so I think this is a great way to implement kind of that preciousness of what you're shooting, even if your project is on, a digital camera. It's honestly also just a great way to train your eye in general. If you don't have a 35mm camera or you're not really big into shooting film, I think one thing that I've been doing in between projects that's been super helpful is to just go out and shoot little tiny camera tests whenever I have a moment to do so. I'll go around town, I'll find different locations, I'll use different gear, different lenses, I'll try different color grades, different film emulations, all that type of stuff. And it's really helped me to dial in a look that I like. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Shout out to Ryan Booth. I don't actually know him in person, but I think this method has just been very helpful for me. Like I said, it's not a replacement to any of these more technical, organizational, pre-production things that you should be doing. It's just a creative tool to add into your toolbox.